Hello, good morning. I hope that everybody is well. I'm a day late with my video this weekend, but that's because we've had our family staying with us and it was so lovely to see them all. The boys, they're growing like beans. We've had an action-packed, manic couple of days, and when they went home yesterday afternoon, Ray, Bertie Boo and myself, we just zonked out for a couple of hours. We were so tired, but we would do it all over again next week if we could. Now you'll have to excuse my voice, but we have talked and we have laughed, and I think I've worn my voice out over the last couple of days. The end of last week, I can't remember what day it was because days merge into one, I finished the sampler that I was stitching, and I started to chart another sampler so that I had something to stitch in the evenings. And I started to stitch this sampler in the week, and last night I finished the border. Now, I was stitching this with shorter side stretchers, and I've put these longer side stretchers on this morning so that I could show you the border in its entirety. Now, when I was stitching Jane Hardy, I stitched the border out of my normal routine. I stitched it in sections as I worked my way through the sampler, but I have reverted to my normal practice on this model. Her name is Sarah, and I have stitched the border in one go. And then I start to embellish the border, and before I went to bed last night I put a few tiny little leaves on there just so I could see the colour and how it was working. Now this morning when I unrolled this off the shorter side stretchers and I looked at the border in its entirety, I've decided that I'm a little bit uncertain how this is looking. And the reason why, I'm going to sit down because I have a bad back this morning, is the difference in the undulations from the horizontal to the vertical. This linen is 52-62, and that means that I get more, well, let me start again. I have used the higher count on the horizontal. The higher the count, the more stitches you fit into the inch, so it contracts your stitching. I use the lower count on the vertical, and that means that it's you fit fewer stitches in to the edge, so it elongates it. And if I measure these undulations, which are exactly the same number of stitches, the horizontal undulation measures 14.14 millimeters, and the vertical undulation measures 19.19 millimeters. Now 5 millimeters is very, very small, but today the difference in that undulation is catching my eye. And I am now going to give some thought throughout the day to restarting this project on a different linen where, excuse me, I'm falling apart today, my body's worn out. Where the difference between the vertical and the horizontal, the weft and the warp threads is not so great, or it is completely even. I'm going to have to do some experimenting. If the original sampler that I was reproducing was stitched on uneven weave linen that was sort of like the same sort of difference between the weft and the warp, then that would be fine. But the original sampler, there is about a millimetre difference between the two undulations. this is what I'm going to be thinking about today when I'm walking Bertie and deciding what I'm going to do. But I do know that if I am not happy and I've got this niggle in the back of my mind, it's going to spoil my enjoyment of that project, and I would much prefer to cut my losses now and restart again to get it right. I'll let you know what I decided to do in next weekend's video. This week I have also finished charting a sampler which has gone to a model stitcher in the States to be stitched, and I hope that in a few weeks' time I will be able to share a sneak peek of that sampler with you as well. What else has happened this week? Well, I had two lovely surprises in the post. A dear friend sent me this beautiful bee needleminder. Now, a bee is the Hands Across the Sea Samplers company logo, because we're busy bees. I am wearing my busy bee top today because I'm going to be a very busy bee. I've got a house that I've got to sort out, beds to strip, beds to wash, towels to wash, sand to hoover up from the boys coming off the beach. But this is lovely, and I love this. I haven't got a bee like this. I've got lots and lots of bees, but this is a new style of bee to add to my growing collection. Put that safe. And then the other surprise that came in the post this week was this gorgeous project bag from a friend in the States. But this project bag is actually made in the UK and comes from a store on Etsy, and that's Patchwork Paw Print. And I have shown these project bags before. I've actually bought these project bags. They are fabulous quality, so well made. Everything is lined up and everything is finished so beautifully. It's a really professional finish on these project bags. And I particularly like this size because Hands Across the Sea Samplers booklets, because we're a UK company, come in A4 size, which is larger than the letter size that you have in the States. And because this is a UK project bag, it's made in the right size to easily accommodate our booklets and give you plenty of room for a hoop, your linen, your threads and your needlework bits and bobs. So it's delightful. And it's such a coincidence. For those that know me, you are very well aware that I like to be coordinated when I stitch, and this project bag will actually match Sarah beautifully. There's many of these colours in Sarah's sampler. So thank you to my dear friends. Now, this week I finished listening to a novel. Although it's not needlework related, I do want to mention the novel because if you are looking for a good book, particularly to listen to, the narration on the book was superb. It was narrated by Steve Hogan, and the book was The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne, B-O-Y-N-E. He also wrote The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas, and it was a long audio book. It was well over 20 hours, but it had a really, really lovely story. And it was a story. It took you on a journey through this man's life, and it had great wit. And I found myself bursting out laughing many times when I was listening to it, and I also cried several times when I listened to it. And it was, although the ending was happy, it was very sad as well. I had a really good cry when I finished the book, and I know it's a book that I'm going to listen to again, so that is a recommendation for you. The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne, and audio. It's a really lovely book to listen to. Now, the other book that's come this week is The Button Box by Lynn Knight. and it's titled Lifting the Lid on Women's Lives. Now this version is a second-hand old copy of the book. I don't mind having second-hand books as long as they come from smoke-free and clean homes. This book is a delight, and it's referenced a new, enchanting and appropriate optic on the history of women's intimate lives, their domestic duties, families, work and fashion. And it's really, really lovely. It's told through the buttons found in a button box. Just really, really lovely. And we all have button boxes. I actually have some buttons from my grandmother in a button box, and I have collected buttons for years and years and years. Sometimes I've gone into a haberdashery store and saw a button I like, and I've just sort of picked it up for my collection. And I've also saved buttons of special items as well. But this book, it's just really lovely to dip into, and it's very sort of, I think that we will all relate to several of the chapters in this book. In chapter 2, Lynn says, sewing belonged to Sunday afternoons at Annie's and Eva's when I was about an 8-year-old. After the last strains of Jimmy Clitheroe had faded from the radio, and before Greetings Pot Pickers. Now, if you don't live in the UK, you might not know what pot pickers are, but people of my generation will know that in the UK. The first thing we sewed was a man's handkerchief, a gift from my dad. And having mastered 4 straight lines and 4 corners, I progressed to an apron for my mum. How very Janet and John. It took greater skill to gather fabric onto a narrow band and trim the apron front and its small pocket with braid. This was not a serious apron, but the kind of pinny women wore when guests came for afternoon tea, which in our household was not an everyday occurrence. And at some stage I made a peg bag, an intermediate task, intended, I suspect, to teach me to sew neat curves. And it goes on, and honestly, it's a lovely little book, and what I'm doing, I am reading a chapter a night just before I switch the light off as I drink a cup of herbal tea. So that's one for you to add to your reading list. The Button Box, Lifting the Lid on Women's Lives by Lynn Knight. And it's K-N-I-G-H-T and double N in Lynn. There we are, you can freeze the screen and write that down. Also, in the week, Janice from Traditional Stitches released Anne Morrison, a Scottish sampler, which is an exclusive for Traditional Stitches to celebrate their 20th anniversary. And there has been a fabulous response to this little sampler, and I think it's really lovely that needleworkers are saying thank you to Janice for her 20 years of service to the needlework world. Joining in the stitch along is a way of saying thank you and acknowledging her contribution to needlework. We would not be able to enjoy our hobby if it wasn't for store owners. You're never going to make a fortune with a needlework store. It's very much a labour of love. So thank you, Janice. Hands across the sea samplers, Sandra and I, we were so honoured to help you celebrate your 20th anniversary. If anybody missed my sort of midweek unexpected video, this is Anne Morrison, and she is a very, very pretty Scottish sampler. Her colours are delightful. Here she is. Now, Janice has set up a Facebook group, Anne Morrison Stitch Along, And if you would like to join, you are very, very welcome. We hope that the stitch along will run on the same sort of way as the Jane Fiddis stitch along is running, and that stitch along is thriving. We're just a couple of members off 1,000 now. You know, please come along, join in the fun. Rose Heck is leading the stitch along, and Rose is a very experienced stitcher, and you know, she's going to lead us in this stitch along. Anne Morrison's sampler was stitched by Angela Bulbeck, who is a Canadian, and Angela did a fabulous job. It was her first time using 46 count linen and the 103 threads, and she is a convert now to those 103 threads from Auvert Soie. Now, I've had lots and lots of emails about the booklet. This is an exclusive edition for traditional stitches. So you can only acquire the booklet through traditional stitches. If you purchase the linen and the silks, Janice is giving you a thank you gift of a 15% discount. Now, if you are based in the UK or Europe, you will not have to pay the shipping rates from Canada. I'm going to ship the UK and mainland European orders directly from the UK to keep your shipping costs down. It's a beautiful booklet, and we hope very much that you enjoy participating in the stitch along, or you know, even if you just purchase the booklet as a thank you to Janice. We hope very much that you enjoy reading the booklet and maybe following other people's progress. That sort of rounds up this week's video. I will have more time to spend next week on needlework related things, and I'll let you know next weekend what I've decided about the linen for Sarah, and what I have done. I think I'll be starting again on a different count of fabric, but you never know. I'm going to probably stitch out a test area, compare and make a decision. Anyway, I think that rounds up this week's video. So stay safe, stay well, and bye-bye.